information about it is awesome.
I feel like the issue of sex and attraction and desire is what, for a long time, like kept me from coming out as disabled or like understanding myself or like coding myself that way, particularly to partners, because of the way that they respond, like with, which is either like with disbelief, like, nah, you're not disabled, like you're cute, you walk around, you know, like, which is also like a difficult thing about being chronically ill, that like having a chronic illness that is also a disability, because it's like chronic illness, it comes and it goes, you know, like that's the thing about chronic illness. But like also for a long time, it kept me from using a cane, which is something that I need to not be in excruciating pain when I walk, in fear that it would like limit my choice of partner, you know? And that's like such a weird thing to make someone choose. It's like, are you gonna walk around normally or are you gonna get laid, you know? Like, that was, yeah.
I mean, there's so much prejudice against disabled people when it comes to sex. Like, I remember someone who was disabled when I started dating Sid. Someone who was disabled was like, how is that? How's that? You know, is it good? I was like, A, it's none of your business, and B, yes, it is good. Thank you very much. Like, like, just because someone's disabled doesn't mean that they are incapable of having sex. Doesn't mean they're incapable of having good sex. And in some ways it means they're more capable because they have to be more conscientious about it.
In the book Life on Wheels, the A to Z Guide for Living Fully with Mobility Issues by Gary Karp, it quotes a survey given at the Baylor College of Medicine in the Center for Research on Women with Disabilities. It drew responses from 475 women with disabilities and 406 able-bodied women. Margaret Nozek, PhD, the principal investigator of the study, says that they found women with and without disability had the same level of sexual desire, but women with disabilities experienced a lot of frustration and barriers in having sexual activities at the level that they wanted. They had trouble finding partners, and so the rate of marriage and living with a partner was much lower for women with disabilities. Ultimately, the study is reassuring. What he also found is that many women with disabilities have overcome the effects of those negative stereotypes and have found wonderful success in developing relationships, families, and satisfying lives. Now, the fact that that even had to be written that way, I think highlights a lot of the stigma against the physically disabled in regards to sex, particularly when it isn't invisible and when it's not hidden. I think one of the most stark times of my life was partners' expectations of what sex should look like and what I'm actually able to physically provide. I once had a partner ask me to do a split in bed, which is something that I can now do, I would like to say, but it's only out of spite of that person. But that I learned how to do a split, interestingly. So thanks, person. If you're watching, you know who you are. Which you very well may be. I want that to stay in. But yeah, and I just remember that thinking to myself, what an unrealistic expectation of what people are able to do in sex, disabled or not, you know? Who are these people who do these splits on demand, you know? Should I do a full cartwheel? Is that what you want me to do when I'm sucking your dick? I don't exactly. I don't see the correlation between my acrobatics and sexual performance. Especially interesting is the finding that disability is unrelated to the level of sexual functioning or satisfaction. Other factors were found to be the cause of limited dating, relationships, marriage, and childbearing options. I also think it's important to note that the way people see, sex is something that people talk about in their families so little and usually so late that a lot of times, depending on your race and your class, it might not be talked about at all. I remember when my mother did finally find out that I had lupus, and which she refuses to acknowledge. She told me disabled people don't leave home. They stay at home and they live with their family. And I think that that's a really interesting idea for the way sex would even look in that situation, you know? But let's come back to that. Let's talk about some mental disabilities, huh? Yeah? Everybody ready for that? Medications, particularly antidepressants, can lower sex drive and make it a longer process to have an orgasm or eliminate orgasm altogether. In those cases, it's especially important to ask. I feel like doctors don't do a great job of communicating the way that like medications affect sexual function. Thus often misleading people who are deciding whether or not to take medication about whether or not that'll be a viable side effect for their life, and allowing them to make a lucid choice in that like situation, instead of just like, here, have this 60 milligrams of antidepressant and never have like an orgasm again. Like, don't think, yeah. It's Alexa. Open for questions and comments, guys.
I think it's really interesting to, and I can say this, being in a relationship with two people on antidepressants, it becomes a negotiation of, okay, today we can really do it, it's fine, we feel good. But then there are other times where it's like, I'm trying so hard and nothing's coming out. And, I remember one night, we tried for, I think, 2 hours.
Yep.
And this is really weird for me, because before I got on antidepressants, I was very speedy and could go.
It was like 3 minutes. It was freakish.
But, and I could come multiple times in an hour. Now, I'm lucky.
One time it was like.
Guys.
Okay. Well, it's a sex trip.
It is a sex show.
Alright.
You have to work for it when you're on antidepressants, is what I
Yeah.
You have to work really hard. And like, the first time I was on antidepressants, I was on 100 milligrams of Prozac a day, and that completely wiped out all sex drive, and I didn't orgasm for a year. A year. I was a little backed
Somebody did
up.
gasp.
It was like, no, it was awful. It was like, and it wasn't even like I didn't try, because I did try. It would just be like, oh, it was the worst experience of my life. Anyway, so I was really anxious about going back on antidepressants, but like I was depressed, so I was like, do I choose happiness or do I choose sex? But how do I be happy without sex? So it's difficult. We just have to work hard.
So how do we think that the stereotypes surrounding the physically disabled